While many Canadians slowed down this month for much needed vacations, federal politicians swung into high gear for an election to be held on September 20th. With just over 3 weeks to go in the 36-day campaign, let's find out what's top of mind. From Tonda MacCharles, senior reporter in the Ottawa Bureau of the Toronto Star, who joins us from the nation's capital. And in beautiful Burlington, Ontario, Laura Stone, reporter for the Globe and Mail's Queen's Park Bureau. Hi to you both.
Hey there.
Hello.
Hi. So I don't know how many of us had on the pandemic bingo board an election, a snap election, and we are facing that right now. Do you think Justin Trudeau has done a good enough job to explain why we're going to the poll? Tonda?
Look, I think the answer now to that is in the polls that we're seeing, the public opinion polls, and all the surveys are showing a drop in Liberal support from the start of the campaign, from even a couple of weeks ago, and a rise in Conservative support. And it doesn't show that Jagmeet Singh is moving a whole lot. But no, it's very clear they've had a really rough start. They think that they've had a better second week. They acknowledge they had a really bad first week, and I guess tough is the way they put it to me, tougher than we anticipated. But I think there's no question, they have fought an opponent in Aaron O'Toole, who's a rookie leader, yet has shown himself out the gate to be very disciplined. And that platform launch on day 2 of the campaign, even the Liberals had to admit they didn't see that coming, and was very smart.
And Laura?
I think the Liberals have struggled to explain the justification for this election. It was a surprise probably to many Canadians, but in political circles, most of us were expecting this. There had been chatter and rumors for weeks that the Liberals were going to call a summer election, and that's exactly what happened. And yet they seem to be a little bit lost in their messaging and in their own trajectory of this campaign. I think a lot of that has to do with some of the events worldwide that we're seeing. In Afghanistan, for instance, this has completely dominated the first 2 weeks of the campaign. And so Justin Trudeau is dealing with both, trying to win re-election and trying to win that coveted majority while answering questions with his prime minister hat on about very difficult questions about Canada's efforts to get Canadians and to help out Afghani nationals to come to Canada in this very difficult and tragic situation that we're seeing unfolding on a daily basis in Afghanistan.
I want to come back to Afghanistan in a few seconds, but you said that this was something that in political circles people were talking about. We're in a global pandemic. We're dealing with the most contagious variant of this pandemic with the Delta, the 4th wave. People are thinking about going to school, back to school, what that's going to look like for their children. So I wanted to ask both of you, how is the public responding to this snap election? Tonda?
Look, I think that there's a lot of noise right now. People's lives are dominated by either trying to get a little bit of summer out of what's left and worried about sending their kids back to school. It's on everybody's mind. So I think it is affecting sort of all the parties, but especially the Liberals' ability to put out why they are having the election, to frame it as the most consequential ever, they say. Well, look, in most people's lives, the most consequential thing is their health, their safety, their relatives. How are they going to deal with kids going back to school amid a Delta variant-driven 4th wave when they can't get vaccinated under 12? So, look, I think it's yes, we saw this coming, and to Laura's point, I mean, there was a lot of chatter, but that's because even though it's a pandemic, it was a minority government that faced an unprecedented crisis that was coming, looked like it was heading out of it. But they say they've done a lot and they want to do more, and they require a democratic mandate for it. But the truth is, it's kind of the life of a minority government anyway. About 2 years is kind of on average what we've seen in Canada. So, but for the 4th wave, I think there wouldn't be that much questioning of the election. And I think it still remains, a risk for the Liberals in the remaining 3.5 weeks of the campaign. If those provinces which are really seeing a rise in cases now, like Alberta, Ontario, really can't get a handle on that rising pandemic, it's going to be political. It's going to be a bombshell in the campaign, just as people are going to the polls.
And Laura?
I think the Liberals wanted this campaign to be about post-pandemic recovery. I mean, everyone's been talking about a fourth wave coming, so it's not a complete surprise that what we're seeing unfolding is the fourth wave, although we don't really know to what extent that's going to impact hospitalizations, for instance. And Tonda talked about schools going back. That's obviously going to be huge in the minds of many voters across the country. But I do think the Liberals tried to craft a message heading into the campaign, and the jury's out on how successful they will be on that, but they want this to be about which government do you want to steer Canada through this wave and through the recovery. I think, the first 2 weeks of the campaign, it is still the summer. People might not necessarily be totally tuned in. I think the campaigns are anticipating a real rise in understanding from the public in the post-Labor Day days and when the debates happen. But of course, that also leaves the parties with very little time to make their case, particularly with mail-in voting, which is going to be a big part of this election. So the clock is really ticking now on the parties, and it's quite a short campaign, so they have to make every moment count.
And Laura, you mentioned Afghanistan, and before the snap election was called, Justin Trudeau was doing very well in the polls, and he was leading, and now we're seeing it turning around, and Aaron O'Toole is leading a few polls. I wanted to get your sense from both of you, from what you've been reporting. Afghanistan happened a couple of days after the snap election was called. Do you think that there's maybe a little bit of regret from the Liberals about the timing of, say, if Afghanistan happened 2 days before the snap election was called, maybe it might not have been called? Tonda, I'd like to go to you first.
Well, look, the election call came on the day Kabul fell, but that wasn't the first time that it came to the government's attention. And so I think there is still a lot to be known and questions legitimately to be asked about sort of what the government's preparation was. They had been preparing or trying to bring in interpreters and other people via immigration measures, but it's deadly bureaucratic, deadly slow. Clearly, it didn't move fast enough. And, we've heard stories about how CSIS has been flagging that when if the U.S. pulls out and the Taliban come back, then watch out. So I don't think this comes as a surprise to them. I think what might come as a surprise to them is, and that's what they've said on the campaign trail, the speed at which it fell, the speed at which the Taliban moved to take control, and the speed of the U.S. withdrawal, and that there was no leeway. So that puts not just Canada, but every other ally in a bind. All of them are having trouble trying to get their interpreters and their families and other people out of Afghanistan. To that extent, it might not politically wound the Liberals to the extent that Conservatives hope it will, because it may be, and this is what the Liberals have told me that they think might happen, is that voters might see the bigger picture and that it's, not just on one party, it's on the speed of this U.S. withdrawal.
And Laura?
I think once a party gets on to the planning phase of an election, it's very difficult to pull that back. So, whether this had happened 2 days or a week before the Liberals had planned to call the election, I'm not sure that would have influenced their timing, just because they have to gather staff, they have to start making plans. They're making last minute tweaks to their platform. This really is kind of a full court press exercise. I do agree with Tonda that the speed at which the situation completely deteriorated seems to have thrown the government off guard. But, I think the questions still remain as to what the ballot box issue will be. Afghanistan is certainly influencing the campaign right now. Mr. Trudeau is getting a lot of difficult questions about it. Is that going to be top of mind when voters cast their ballot? Or is it going to be domestic issues like housing and affordability and healthcare that really end up sealing the deal for whichever party forms government on September 20th?
So let's talk about that, what you just mentioned, as far as what matters to voters right now. Affordability is something that's been brought up a lot. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Housing costs are rising. Laura, have the leaders gone far enough in addressing affordability?
I think this has been a big part of the campaign so far. I think you've seen it from the NDP, mostly talking about taxing the most wealthy. Both the Liberals and Conservatives have released extensive housing policies. This is the type of issue that gets those kind of suburban middle-class family voters to the polls. And those are the kind of swing ridings, like where I am right now in Burlington, which is a Liberal riding but has been Conservative in the past, that the parties, the two major parties, really tend to focus on. And so I think we will be hearing more of that from all of the campaigns, especially heading into the debates on September 8th and 9th.
And Tonda, another issue that's come up is the issue of private versus public health care. In a recent article, you quoted Dr. Catherine Smart, president of the Canadian Medical Association, saying, quote, political parties are batting around vague ideas and numbers, but have not provided a level of detail necessary on health care. Are vague ideas the hazard of election campaigns?
Yes, they are, and especially when it comes to an area of government action that's not actually the federal government's, right? I mean, the federal government transfers money to the provinces for healthcare, and that is where the difference in the philosophies comes here. All parties, although the Conservatives and the NDP have been more specific, but all parties are promising billions and billions more in health transfers. The question becomes to what extent they're prepared to tie the province's hands for their own priorities. For the Conservatives, it's mental health and addictions. For the NDP, they really want to push on pharmacare, dental care, eye care, and long-term care. The Liberals have set markers down on long-term care, and I think there's more to come from them on that, but they haven't pinned themselves down to a target or a goal or, responding to the province's demands. So look, the Liberals have tried to use healthcare as a wedge issue, more importantly, against the Conservatives, arguing that the Conservatives really would sort of on the sly, through the back door, allow privatization to come in and create a two-tier healthcare system. It's a tried and true tactic by the Liberals against the Conservatives. But in this case, to everyone's surprise, Mr. O'Toole has said, yes, I'm interested in innovation, privately led innovation that the provinces might want to help us all out on healthcare. What Catherine Smart was getting at there is once you open the door, you start draining the good doctors and resources and the money out of the public system, and then everybody suffers. So that's a really technical debate, though, to have in the middle of a campaign. So I'm not sure where that's going to go.
Well, throughout the pandemic, we've been hearing about how this pandemic has affected women. We've been hearing the word she-cession and how a lot of women have had to leave the workforce to be at home with their families. Laura, is this election where the country might actually be able to get a workable universal daycare system?
I think that's going to be a huge issue in this campaign. We heard a lot about it at the beginning and not so much in week 2. I think it will certainly be brought up again. And that is one of the key differences between the Liberals and Conservative plan. And the Liberals have an advantage here in that they've signed a number of agreements already with provinces. And we heard from Quebec Premier François Legault this week on his demands for the parties. And while he praised the Conservatives, he also talked about the fact that he doesn't want this agreement that his government has already signed with Ottawa for $10 a day daycare to increase childcare spaces to be ripped up, while Mr. O'Toole's party is promising more of a tax credit system for families that he says would greater benefit low-income families. So I do think that this is going to be a major issue, and certainly it's something that the Liberals are going to want to continue pointing out because they do have that slight edge in that they're one step ahead here with a number of provinces in signing these agreements while they were in government.
And Tonda,
including, by the way, with Conservative-led governments in Manitoba, New Brunswick, and basically in Quebec as well. And where they're disadvantaged, the federal Conservatives, in their argument, is that Quebec has done 2 massive studies on the usefulness of a tax credit, which they've tried out. And it shows that it renders the public daycare system, it doesn't provide quality care, it doesn't create spaces, and they are now having to use the money that Trudeau's given them to try and create those regulated spaces. So I'm with Laura. I think this is still a big differentiator between the two parties, and I think it's going to play a role. You're going to see it come back to center stage in the weeks ahead.
I wanted to get your view on from what you've been reporting, because I think last summer we did hear the Black Lives Matter movement. It seemed like everybody was talking about it, and most recently with the graves at the residential schools, it's weird to call them schools, in Canada were discovered. But it doesn't seem to be very much talk about, I guess, systemic racism. Does this surprise both of you, Tonda?
Yeah, it really does. Look at the wrenching, heartbreaking months we just went through as those graves were being discovered of the Indian residential school children. Those were riveting moments through the summer, I would say like May, June, July, and now it's dropped off the radar. In terms of systemic racism and Islamophobia, those don't actually feature as words even in the Conservative platform. These are debates I think that you will find coming to the fore as leaders hit certain ridings. We've seen it in Winnipeg. We saw it when Jagmeet Singh went to Cowessess. But I sure would like to hear more about it. It's one of those issues that it seems to pop up in the House of Commons when there's a crisis, but it really does need to be dealt with on the election trail, because how much money do Canadians want to put to actually answer all those calls to action? That's an important question.
And Laura?
I think this is where NDP leader Jagmeet Singh will try to really differentiate himself from the other leaders. As Tonda mentioned, he did visit Cowessess First Nation. He's talked more about Indigenous issues than the other leaders. The other leaders have touched on it, but I would say it's primarily been driven by the NDP. So clearly that's a play to those more progressive voices. And we've seen Jagmeet Singh really come out hard in his criticisms of the Liberals throughout this campaign, probably harder than we've ever seen before, and calling out what he says is hypocrisy from Mr. Trudeau and his government on many promises that they've made on this front. I think this will play a significant role in the debates. I expect that there will be an entire section, certainly on Indigenous reconciliation. And so I do think the public, and I hope that they're paying attention to the debates, because I do think all the leaders will have to answer very difficult questions about where they stand on these issues.
We only have a couple minutes left, actually like a minute and a half, but I want to get to two questions in. It's been a really difficult year and a half. And Tonda, Ontarians were hit hard. Ontario's had probably one of the longest lockdowns in the world, and school closures, job losses in the country's seat-rich in our province. Do you think that voter priorities and loyalties have changed during this pandemic?
That's an interesting question. I think we'll see. We'll try and draw conclusions after the election in terms of what voters put priority on. I thought months ago that the pandemic and the management of it would figure large in voters' minds. But you know what? I'm more and more convinced now that voters are less likely to reward the government for doing something they did, because they view that as the job of government anyway, and any stripe of government would have done the same. And I think that voters are really looking to see, okay, what are you going to do for me now? It's that age-old problem. They don't thank you. They don't reward you for what you did. They want to know where you're going, where do you want to take the country.
And Laura, I'll let you have the last 30 seconds. Should Canadians be concerned about voting in a pandemic?
Well, I think that's going to be a very personal thing, and there'll be a post-mortem on that when we see the voter turnout. If it's going to be low, like we've seen in the recent Nova Scotia election, for instance, how the parties plan to get out the vote. We've heard about the canceling of on-campus voting, how that impacts the youth vote. So I do think that this is going to be a really unique time and a really unique test, because we really don't know how people feel about it, and we don't know how organized they're going to get if they want to mail in their ballots, for instance, ahead of time. So that is kind of one of the challenges for all the parties, is to motivate their base and actually get them out to the polls.
We know there's a lot of news happening, and you're both very, very busy, and we do really appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to speak to us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah,
thank you so much.
The agenda in the summer with NAM Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.